Good morning once again, and welcome back to New Day here on TV3. It's time for us to enter our social segment for the morning. And to help fight the deadliest Ebola outbreak the world has ever seen, 42 Ghanaian health workers were deployed to the worst hit countries, Liberia and Sierra Leone. Today, two of them are with me in the studio, and we're going to be talking to them about some of the challenges and what they went through when they went abroad. Now, introducing first, we have Dr. Kwadwo Osei Poku. He's a family physician specialist, and also Mr. Augustine E. Sego. We're going to take a quick look at this short story.
42 medical personnel left the shores of Ghana to help fight the Ebola disease. 28 of them were deployed to Liberia and 12 to Sierra Leone. 3 months on the front line, they worked in Ebola treatment centers, counseled traumatized patients, and helped to trace and investigate contacts of Ebola patients. The innovations at the treatment unit helped to save lots of lives. The governments of Sierra Leone and Liberia duly commended their selflessness during their 3-month stay.
All right, so that was a very short video, but obviously you get the gist of what we're talking about this morning. Now, just to reiterate, Dr. Kwadwo Osei Poku, the family physician specialist, was actually the team leader for those who were actually drafted over to Liberia. Is that correct?
Yes.
And also Mr. Augustine E. Sego was a team leader for Sierra Leone. Is that correct? All right. First off, how is it one goes about getting deployed in the health service to one of these countries that have been struck by these diseases? Any of you?
Okay, the deployment was done by Ghana Health Service through Ministry of Health, collaboration with WHO and then the WAHU, to be precise.
Okay. Were you? Did you volunteer yourself?
Yes,
you did.
Through volunteering.
Okay. All right. And what were your initial reservations when you first heard about, obviously this happening in Liberia and Sierra Leone, and obviously, when you volunteer yourself, you're putting yourself into some kind of risk factor. But what were the things that you were thinking about when you were actually volunteering for this work?
Well, you look at how devastating the disease has been. I mean, the case fatalities were very high, and you have that willingness to serve. For me, for instance, I had been involved with training people on Ebola, and everything had been talk, with very little practical experience.
Right.
So I saw it as an opportunity to get my skills honed, so that it won't be just talk, but it will be talk with action. And I have the opportunity to be part of the Regional Task Force, Ebola Task Force Committee in Ashanti Region, which is headed by the Regional Director, Health Director, Dr. Alexis. And that actually gave me that platform, and having identified the need for a practical experience where we could build an institution, I could add on to the capacity of building an institutional memory. I, decided that, I had to help. Instead of waiting for it to come, I had to go out to the battlefield. Now, initially there was a lot of fear, but there's always the word of God that keeps comforting you. Because I was convicted within myself that no, I had to go, I had to help. And then the hurdles of facing your wife, your kids.
I was about to bring that in as
then
well.
Your parents. I actually did not tell my mom, because I just lost my grandmom.
Right.
Yes, she was very old.
May she rest in peace.
Yes, so, thank you. So actually, I left before my dad told her.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that might. That's a naughty boy. We'll talk about that one later. Augustine, for yourself, when you first got there, you kind of expected to see what you were seeing. You can be sensitized, you can be told exactly, but when you got there and you saw everything for yourself, how was that? Was it what you were expecting, or was it a whole nother ball game?
Yeah, for me, I had the previous experience.
Okay.
I had been in Congo twice.
Okay.
Liberia, from August to September.
Mm-hmm.
So going there in November, it was added up experience.
Okay.
But when we reached Sierra Leone, in fact, things were tough. But we got there at the time Sierra Leone was at the peak of the disease or the infection. So the numbers were flowing in as if they were chicken.
Wow.
Excuse my language.
Yeah.
So that frightened most of those following me. And talking about experience that we saw at the first instance, Freetown is at altitude 2,000 and over altitude, and coming from low altitude like Ghana, I knew and for sure that the altitude sickness was setting.
Okay.
At that instance, I had no option than to change my position as a leader to a psychosocial support giver, because I couldn't afford even hospitalizing one person. Moreover, I was leading not only the Ghanaian team, I was leading the whole Wahoo team.
Wow.
And we had Francophones being the majority.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a tough, and I had to think fast. I had to do everything precisely and not afford any mistake.
Wow.
That was what.
How was it like working at the treatment centers? I'll start with that.
Well, before you get to work there, you go through a transitional training, and that includes infection prevention control training. You go through a cold Ebola treatment unit phase training, where you go through a lot of theory, and then there's a simulated Ebola treatment unit that was actually built by the American Army at the Police Academy in Liberia. There are other simulated ETUs as well. So we had ours there, and then we had the hot phase of it, where we're actually in the treatment unit, and that's where you get to see the suspected case, the probable, and then the confirmed cases. So we went through that transitional training, which is mandatory for every healthcare worker, and that really helped because it was a good prep up for us before we started training. Mm-hmm. Now, working in the ETU, there are protocols you follow. You just have to stick to it, and you don't work in isolation. It's teamwork, team dynamics is at play, and you look out for each other. So before clinicians, we go in for rounds, we actually discuss the cases we have, and then see the critically ill, and we assign ourselves to the cases, and then we go in as a group. So after we put on our personal protective equipment, we have a time of prayer.
Right.
We share time of prayer, and then we march in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, there were reports, obviously, that some of the treatment centers and hospitals had to turn patients away because they were completely and utterly overrun. How was it like seeing that? Because you've volunteered, you've put your life on the line, you've crossed borders, you've got all the way there, you're ready to help, and yet you still can't. How does that feel for health professionals like yourself?
Yeah, that was tough. That you could see people coming in, and as a professional, you have the zeal, you have the energy, you have everything to work with. Talking about protective clothing and everything, but you cannot see the patient. That was really tough for us. It was really, really tough. I must say that maybe I may go at a little bit of the question, but I will come back to it still. That in Sierra Leone, we were given a whole ETU to mind because it had been really opened, but there was no staff to deal with. And where we were placed to was where the burden was highest. That's western area of Freetown. That was where the burden was higher. So we were given all what it takes to work, but ambulances were not there. So you may hear that, oh, this place we have so many people sick there, hence you cannot get them. It was really tough.
Wow.
Really, really tough.
Okay.
Well, to add to it,
Sure.
they had the health systems and structures were fragile, so as well as the human lives had been lost, especially healthcare workers. So most of the hospitals are shut down. So they couldn't, if you were suffering from other disease condition, it's difficult to access care.
Yeah.
So at our ETU, at some point when, the number of cases had declined drastically, if you met the case definition, though you probably, clinically, I would say you probably don't have Ebola, but you could meet the case definition for Ebola, we had to bring you in and at least get you an Ebola-free certificate. We test you the day you come in. After 72 hours, you're tested, and then you go through psychosocial support, counseling, and then you're discharged. And we make arrangements for you to go to a hospital. The very few hospitals were open, and they had skeleton structures. So we make arrangements, give you a referral, and then send you there. So it was a big challenge at some point, because we realized that the ETU is not too sophisticated in terms of hospital equipment. So, and there are protocols you follow. So we don't use a stethoscope there. There are a lot of things we don't use there. So it's always a challenge. You're restricted as to what you can do. Then again, it's a preventive measure, so you stick to it.
Okay. Now, in seeing everything that you saw, obviously you've both, physically been part of us bringing this Ebola menace under control, and the cases have decreased, and we're almost at a point where some countries can actually say they don't have any new cases yet. But what would you say, the two of you, was one of your major achievements while you were there?
Well, my major achievement goes to my team. Okay. Because we were 39 in total. We had 29 Ghanaians and 10 Francophones. And in Liberia, we worked under various pillars. We're seconded to ASEWA, this African Union support for Ebola outbreak in West Africa. And they had pillars under which they were working. The pillars included epidemiology and surveillance. We had psychosocial support, social mobilization. We had case management pillar, and then restoration of healthcare services. Then in the latter stages, they introduced school infection prevention and control. Now, under all these pillars, my team members were very effective, were deployed under all these pillars, and there were reassignments at some point. And we worked hard. We were part of the management decisions. We had a clinical psychologist, and we had a resident psychiatrist. They helped develop the psychosocial first aid. I was at the ETU at some point. I became a WHO facilitator for HOT training. The PID surveillance team, that's the epidemiologist, and then the public health officers. Their reports were always excellent. That was, their reports were always highlighted. So, and the social mobilizer, I should not forget her. She did a good job.
So it was all about the team, really.
Yes, the team.
It wasn't any individuals. The team
I give it to the team. Yes,
it was the team effort that did
at the school IPC. Were
okay.
key there.
We've actually run out of time. I wish we could actually talk some more, but I want to thank you both for especially what you've done for Africa as a whole, in giving your individual assistance to help curb this menace, and we thank you for everything that you've done so far.
Thank you for the opportunity as well.
So this has been Dr. Kojo Osei Opoku, who's a family physician, and also Augustine Isego, who's a biomedical scientist, and they were both deployed to Sierra Leone and Liberia as team leaders to assist with the Ebola menace. So if you do see them, thank them also.